Principal Matters Podcast, episode 507. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Principal Matters episode. Jen, this week, we're going to be talking to a good friend and a longtime listener, Principal Paden Morris. This is a conversation with a leader who leads a school in West Virginia. He was named the 2026 West Virginia School Counselors Association Administrator of the Year. And I was just so privileged to have a practicing principal in the room who's just doing such good work. And hello to you, because he listens to you and me talk often. And Paden, thank you for being this week's guest. But before we introduce you to Paden, we always take an opportunity for Q&A. And Jen, this was a question a friend of mine asked me recently, and this has happened to me twice in probably the last month, where I'm sitting down with somebody, maybe it's coffee, a meal, and they'll say, Will, what do you think the solution is for the state of U.S. schools? And I don't know about you, but I don't like that question because it's so big and complex. But I just wanted to just say it out loud. You know, we're releasing this at the beginning of July. If people are listening to this as they are enjoying summer and getting ready for the holiday, they're probably going to be having people asking that question too, or around the table or the celebrations. What do you say when people ask you that question?
Well, you're right. I hate the question because it's so complex and there's not a single answer. But my thought when people do ask me, I say, well, tell me what you're talking about. Because depending, if we lined up 1,000 people and we said, what do you think is wrong with schools? You'd get 1,000 different answers. You would also get some people saying, my kid's school, my district is amazing. There isn't anything wrong. And so I think it's an erroneous assumption to lump everything into a state of despair. As a matter of fact, I talked to a colleague not too long ago who said, actually, given all the systems in the U.S., in most places, schools are actually working quite well. Many students are getting a free and appropriate public education. So that's something to hang on to. I do think we haven't yet cracked the code with urban education. And typically what happens is we throw more money at it, but the money comes with so many complex systems that are hard to navigate that many times the money is not as impactful as we would like. Suburbans and rural districts, all three of those buckets, they're very, very different. The approaches are different. The leadership has to be different. The communities are different. We haven't been able to figure out a funding formula nationwide that works, and nobody likes anybody else to touch their money. So that's going to be a hard lift. But I think what I'm trying to say here is let's not forget that many times education is going well. It's easy to be mad at schools, but that's not actually fair. And the funding pathways have not been solved. And urban education is getting a lot of the attention for failing schools. So that's where I think we need to focus. And people are doing that work. So many people working so hard and have to hear these questions over the July 4th picnic,
Yeah, I was able to attend a conference in Dallas, Texas, at the Texas Association, and one of their keynotes was Liz Dozier, who was an administrator in Chicago, and now she leads an organization that focuses on school improvement. And man, Jen, she was so honest about her own story of stepping into a failing, struggling school where one day they had so many fights they had to call in 20 policemen to establish calm. But she was also really honest that she thought initially she could just discipline kids out of, into submission. And then she realized all the things you and I have been talking about. And so she did such an eloquent job of the story of that transformation of that school to becoming the place where students and kids were proud, or students and parents were proud for their children to attend. And she was in it. She was committed for the long haul to transform those outcomes. But as I was listening back to that conversation, I was hearing her say three things, and I've said these three things to you before, and you and I have talked about them so many times. But thing one, she got really clear on her beliefs, of what is possible for these students to experience, and what is the belief I have for what a real productive, flourishing school should look like. Two, she got really clear on her systems. which is how do I build the systems that support the outcomes that I want? And 3, she got really clear on the relationships she had to build from teachers to students to parents to really have people feel like they belong, so that they could step up to those expectations and into those systems. So when people ask me that question, it's hard because I know that it's laced with all kinds of politics a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to tell them is, I can't tell you in one sentence the solution, but I can introduce you to people that are doing the work in urban settings, in suburban settings, in rural settings. In every single one of those settings, I know leaders who are transforming their school communities. And Jen, you're right. Gallup polling in 2025 showed for the 11th straight year that the public perception of schools is that they're all failing, Fs. Parents gave schools Fs across the board when they asked, how would you grade the nation's schools? And then you also know this, when they asked them, how would you grade your own child's school? The average was Bs across the board. So there's a disconnect. If we know there's schools that are my kids' schools being successful, then maybe there's a perception problem too, that we think that all those other schools out there represent everybody else, and they don't. It's so I just want to encourage our listeners when they're being asked those questions, not to step into I think it's a false assumption that all schools are failing when that question is asked, and to answer that question with perspective, because there are schools that are failing, but there's also schools that are doing really well. And how do we raise people's understandings of the difference between the two?
Well, and I think school leaders bear a huge responsibility to change that narrative. I was in Chicago last week working with an amazing district, by the way, Deerfield, number 109, amazing administrators. I walked in the room and I said to the gal who had me come, I said, I love the way this group feels. Like the air in the room is so positive. Yeah. And I said to them, guys, we're not doing anybody any favors when we walk around the world talking about how hard this is and how awful this is, and talk about that the one fight. And I know there's some schools that have do have to call in reinforcements because there's bad days, but we bear the responsibility for changing this narrative too. And so when people ask me, how's it going with your job, I try to say, gosh, really well. The people are incredible. We're working really hard. We've got some things with it. Every day there's a new problem to solve. But overall, it's an amazing way to spend time working with kids and teachers and leaders. I wouldn't want to change a thing. That's the kind of thing we need to be saying to the world.
Well, it reminds me, Jen, of when your mom, you told me the story of when your mom will call you and just say, tell me about your day.
Yeah.
Because you have such a cool job an interesting job of every day you are experiencing something that most people would be like, wow, I never have that experience in my work.
Exactly.
And so you're right. It's a privilege, it's an honor, and it's a blessing to be a part of the work. And so when people ask those big questions, I think it's so important to not be afraid of the question, but then point them back to the parts of school that have always made school the place we wanted to create for students, even if not every place is perfect, or your experiences may have not had. Everybody has their own experience too of how they define school, and how they want it to be. And I don't want to pretend for a second that anybody's got it all figured out or have the perfect school. They don't, but they can have a healthy school.
That's right.
And that's the difference. So, man, Jen, thank you for letting me pick your brain on that question. Can you remind listeners how they can stay connected with you and your wonderful resources?
Absolutely. Reach out to me anytime at my website, jenschwanke.com. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter, Principal Problems, at that website.
Yeah, I read it every week as soon as it comes out, and I cannot wait for everybody to have that in their inbox. So subscribe to Jen's newsletter today. And if you are listening to this and you're not a subscriber to our weekly Monday and Wednesday newsletters that come out for Principal Matters, then just go on the website and you can subscribe there, or just send me an email and I'll send you the link. But you can find all today's resources at williamdparker.com or at our new website address, principalmatterspodcast.com. Until next time, I know you're going to love this conversation with Paden. Thank you, Jen. And we just want to wish you guys a great week, and thanks for doing what matters. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but what does that actually look like? Look no further than iExcel, the ultimate online learning and teaching platform for K-12. iExcel gives you meaningful insights that drive real progress, and research can prove it. Studies in nearly all 50 states across the U.S. show that schools that use iExcel outperform other schools on state tests. Educators who use iExcel love that they can easily see how their schools are performing in real time to make better instructional decisions. And iExcel doesn't stop at just data. iExcel also brings an entire ecosystem of resources for your teachers with a complete curriculum, personalized learning plans, and so much more. It's no wonder that iExcel is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts. Ready to join them? Visit iexcel.com/PM to get started. Support for Principal Matters comes from DigiCoach and its walk-through tool. I want you to picture walking through classrooms, observing teachers and students. In just 10 minutes, you'd hope to see good instructional strategies and student learning taking place. Or maybe you have questions about something missing from instructional planning. Instead of taking 30 minutes to write a follow-up email or leaving your teacher unsupported, wouldn't it be great to have an app on your phone or tablet where you could send immediate feedback while also collecting data? Enter DigiCoach, customizable walkthrough coaching tool created by school leaders for school leaders with thousands of pre-written research-based commendations and coaching tips, empowering you to provide quick, actionable feedback. DigiCoach is not an evaluation tool. Instead, it's an easy-to-use feedback and coaching tool, an efficient way to store your notes and collect data for improving student outcomes right in your hands. It can be used on iPhone, Android, or tablets and includes speech-to-text functions. Make the most of your walkthroughs with a tool that saves you time and enhances meaningful feedback to your teachers. Go to digicoach.com to learn more, and please tell them Principal Matters recommended you check them out. That's digicoach.com.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week I want to talk about steady leadership with my special guest, Paden Morris. Paden Morris serves as principal of Tyler Consolidated High School in Tyler County, West Virginia, where he has led for the past 5 years. Known for his steady leadership, Paden is passionate about helping staff and students believe in their own capacity for growth. He is a believer in collaboration and committed to reflection, continuous growth, and building a school culture where belief drives performance. A husband and father of a curious 3-year-old, Paden is intentional about balancing leadership and family while prioritizing what truly matters. And in 2026, in fact, at the time of this recording, just yesterday, he was recognized by the West Virginia School Counselors Association as Administrator of the Year. Paden Morris, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps in that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Thank you, Will. I'm just very happy to be here. Very happy to talk to you. This is kind of like a dream come true. I've been listening to your show for a long time. It's had a great impact on me personally and professionally. And I share your words and wisdom with as many people as I can. This is my 12th, 13th year in education. I started as a special education teacher. I went to school to be a science teacher. So I've taught science, taught special ed, taught math for a little bit. And I got into the world of career and technical education. And then soon after that, made the leap into school administration. So I'm very pleased about all the opportunities I've had in through my professional endeavors. And I'm just excited to be here and tell you a little bit about some exciting things that are happening at my school.
Well, we're excited to have you. And just so Principal Matters listeners have some context, I mean, we have corresponded for years. You've been a great listener to the show back when you were just stepping into leadership. And I'm kicking myself that I hadn't had you on the show yet. But when the last time we connected, I just started picking your brain and was like, man, Paden, you need to be on the show. And then we had no idea until literally yesterday you emailed me because we'd already had this set up. We were exchanging notes for the recording when you told me you just yesterday found out you're recognized by the West Virginia School Counselors Association as Administrator of the Year. So, wow, what perfect timing to pull together. You've had 5 years now to build a really strong school environment there, but you've been doing this work longer than 5 years. Your career has been in Tyler Consolidated High School. Although I know you've had some time in the elementary as well as the high school settings.
Yeah.
What are some of the outcomes you're most proud of right now as you guys have been maintaining and building momentum in your leadership?
Yeah, I think probably one of the things I'm most proud of is when I took this position, we were coming right out of, the pandemic, which was immensely difficult on schools and on students and staff. And, I think that I got to really witness firsthand some of the challenges that coming out of that posed, and to just kind of rebalance, recollaborate, and recondition ourselves for school was a challenge. But one of the biggest things that we focused on was making school feel normal again. Because when I first started, we were still wearing masks. So it was even trying to get to know your students, get to know your student body. You felt like there was a barrier there, through that. So, working through those early challenges and really turning a hard corner and putting ourselves on a trajectory for strong success, is something I was really proud of. And, we have very strong staff, very strong support staff. Strong support from our district office. So, and that's what it took. I mean, it took a entire team effort to get us back on the path that we knew we wanted to be on and that we could be on.
Sometimes talking about practice can feel odd because you do the work so much. Sometimes you don't recognize when you've been doing something that maybe when you take a step back from it, you're like, wow, how did we do that? But I want you to back up and tell us the story of how did you learn as a leader because I know what my temptation as a leader is to try to control, but we've talked before this recording too about some of the ways you've had to learn to let go in order to build capacity in others. So tell us how you've been able to do that, Paden. What are some ways you guys have been able to share the capacity of the growth that's happened in your school?
Yeah. One of the first things, that I established and reestablished as a school principal was the capacity of what a strong leadership team can bring to a school. So we identified challenges, we identified strengths, we identified weaknesses. We worked collaboratively together as the experts. I mean, your staff each bring unique expertise to the table. So leaning on them for guidance, that was our big first shift, really was to identify a common direction, an ultimate goal, and to build our culture and climate around that. Our mission statement at Tyler Consolidated is to make it possible for all students to be self-supporting, contributing, and caring citizens. And, we really dialed in on that. And we made a, determination that every decision we made would revolve around that. And that started with us as a staff, and then continued to grow with, our students as well. Something that I followed in the footsteps of our superintendent was an advisory council of students, to where I could work directly with them, because something I often say to them all the time is there's 360 some of them, there's one of me. They have a far bigger impact on the culture and climate than I can have, and I don't think they at first recognized that responsibility that came with that. But we have great kids and they do great things, and then just getting back to focusing and recognizing that and celebrating that has been a big push for us over these past few years.
Wow. Well, I want to circle back on a couple of things. One, you have that mission statement memorized. Say that again, Paden. What's your mission statement?
The mission of Tyler Consolidated High School is to make it possible for all students to be self-supporting, contributing, and caring citizens. And I
say those slowly. Self-supporting,
contributing, and caring citizens.
Wow. I love that. Tell us a little bit more, especially for listeners who are curious, a little bit more about Tyler Consolidated High School, because you've got, what'd you say, about 360 students.
Yeah.
That means you can wrap your arms around that community. You probably know everyone. But tell us a little bit about what it's like to live there, and what are some of the things that your kids get to be involved in that you're so proud of?
Yeah. So just to contrast from my experience as a student, I went to a high school that had about 1,300 kids in it. There were 370 kids in my graduating class. So there's as many kids in my school building right now as I graduated with. So coming to a small school as a professional, I developed a deep appreciation to what a small school setting can bring to students. When I got here as a first year teacher, I knew as long as I was going to be in education, this is where I was going to be. There's rich tradition, strong history, high expectations in this school, and that's the kind of culture that you want to be a part of as an educator. But our kids, they are heavily involved. They are some of the busiest individuals I would know. And I emphasize, and us and our staff emphasize that to them. We want them involved. Over the course of the last 3 years, we've tracked their extracurricular involvement rate. 3 years ago, we were at 86, then 89, and then last year we were at 93% involved in some sort of extracurricular activity. And I'd say we're going to be right around that 90 to 93% again this year. And that's a huge testament to the opportunities that our staff provides them and the level of commitment that our kids bring to the table. And an involved kid is a successful kid in my mind. If they have something attaching them to school that's not just school itself, that increases motivation, that increases opportunity, it increases confidence, all those things that we're trying to develop and instill on them as they work towards becoming graduates. So some of the programs that we're really proud of, we have an incredibly strong FFA program. We have 3 of the best agricultural education teachers, in my opinion, in the state of West Virginia, and in my opinion, the best. We have an incredible band program and music program. We're one of the most successful, if not the most successful band in the state of West Virginia. We have over 50 kids in the band. We probably have over 70 kids in the FFA. And then other programs like FBLA, our athletic programs. We have just a strong community of involvement from staff and students, which just makes this place special.
Paden, kudos to you and your school community and your students. 90% plus students involved in extracurricular activities means kids don't want to miss school.
Yeah.
When they're involved in something they love to do, they want to be there. I was just visiting a school last night. A friend of mine invited me down for an evening to celebrate, and that's what they were talking about. It's like, we want this to be a place where kids want to be, and kids want to be there. If there's 90% plus of them involved in extracurricular activities, I also want to come back to that mission statement, because every school has one on a wall somewhere, but you memorized yours. Self-supporting, contributing, and caring. You guys were careful about picking those words. Why were those the words you guys decided together to center around?
Yeah. Well, when I took the position, we had a mission statement. It was quite long. It would have been impossible to memorize. And us as a leadership team, we kind of just chose those highlights because we felt that communicated a strong message of what the goal was that we wanted them to achieve here before they graduate. I often tell our kids it's 4 years. It's like 4 pages in the book of life, but it's some of the most important pages that they're going to flip through, as a student here, because it sets them on a path, a trajectory of what's to come next. And what's to come next for a high school student is the great unknown, in a lot of ways. So the big thing that we push, and I'd say probably my kids probably get tired of hearing it because we communicate it often in our messaging. It's on our daily announcements. But self-supporting, we want them to leave here to be able to take care of themselves and the others that they care for. Contributing, we want them to be involved in something, whether that's employment, enlisted in the military, enrolled in college, something that's going to keep moving them forward on their path. And then most importantly, and the last one is caring. We want them to care for themselves. We want them to care about others. We want them to develop skills that make them a high quality human being, to where that no matter where they're at, they're going to bring that piece to the table.
Wow. What I love about that too is, especially those first 2 words, self-supporting and contributing, they're almost two sides of the same coin,
Mm-hmm.
because on the one hand, you want students developing self-reliance and grit and perseverance and all those things that it takes to be able to show up and and be the best versions of themselves and learn how to be self-starters. All those words can be part of that. And that contributing part is the other side of that coin, which is, well, why though? Why do we want you to develop those kinds of skills, gifts, and temperaments and personalities and character traits so that you can collectively be a part of something that is giving back and that's helping, and then that caring piece is such a testament, I think, to the values that you guys model and expect, which is that this is going to be a place where we take care of each other. And Paden, I know you're like me. You do this work because it's a calling and you're passionate about it. But when people begin to criticize schools, there's so many general criticisms of schools out there. I just love to hold up examples like yours where that's not just a motto on the wall. That's a commitment you guys have made, are making, and will continue to be making. Anything else you want to add to that before I change gears?
No, I just think like the importance, of just, collective efficacy. I know that's like a buzzword, but getting all the people to the table, working together, having a clear direction, and most importantly, where I think some people kind of meet a roadblock is that has to include your kids, it has to include your students. They have to know that, they can approach you, have those conversations, work through some of those challenges. I just met with our ninth grade 2 weeks ago. I spent a day in the classroom. I asked them what's one thing that's going really well for them this school year, what's one thing that they've been challenged with, and what's one thing that they find trivial about Tyler Consolidated High School, like they don't understand, want more information about, and because they deserve an explanation on why certain decisions are made, and I think that's important.
That's so good. When you and I were talking off recording, you told me this great story about when your superintendent gave you a rock.
Yeah.
and you adapted this acronym, and I'd tell that story. And I'm also really curious how you apply that, because even though you're a small community, like every community, you're not insulated from criticism or the craziness on social media or negative public opinions. And so how does that the story of that rock help you stay centered at times too?
Well, I think kudos to our superintendent. As a young administrator, he recognized that when you take this leap into this profession, it comes with criticism, critiques, all those things, and you get in yourself as a position where you feel like you're defending your school all the time. And I needed to reframe that a little bit. And part of that was, through his guidance, and he had given us administrators a rock, and painted on it said DWR, and it stands for Don't Water Rocks. And basically his message is don't put your time and energy into things where you're not going to see things change or growth or beyond your control. If certain opinions are there, you're probably not necessarily going to change those. And if you are spending your energy and time to do that, you're probably missing out on opportunities to work with your kids, to work with your staff, and to invest your time where it truly matters and where the impact is going to be made inside your building. So it led me to a point too, just through other guidance, where I got to us, and I communicated this with my staff. I said, I will defend this place every day, but I'd rather be proud of it, and so rather than defending the work, my message was, let's be proud of the work, that we're doing, and share that pride, because sometimes we're not vulnerable enough to do that, and that's what we need, to work through these challenges. You have to share the things that you're proud of.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to steal that. Paden, I'd rather be proud of this place than to constantly be defending it. And what I appreciate about that is, obviously there's times where you have to have crucial conversations and speak directly to whatever is coming your way. But if that becomes the place where you're pouring all of your attention, then you're missing out on the opportunity. I call it the the 5% distracts you from the 95. You're spending your time on that 5% of negative energy or feedback or problem solving when 95% of your people are typically doing great work, good learning, having a wonderful day, exhibiting excellence. And so how do we get that light back on the 95%?
Yeah.
And for leaders, I'm just going to speak directly to Principal Matters listeners, because I've had this conversation so often with friends who I talk to or coach. You're going to have something negative to respond to. I guarantee probably by the end of today.
Oh, yeah.
But when you are messaging for your school, when you're sending out an email to the staff, when you're putting something up on social media, don't let that negative thing be what motivates you. In other words, don't take a posture of defense, just like you said. Mm-hmm. Focus back on, okay, I've heard that negative thing, I've dealt with it, but now what are all the amazing things that have been happening that people need to know about? Because that's why we're in school, and that's why people want to be in school. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think, and we've talked, I listen a lot, I read a lot, and I want to think like maybe Joe Sanfilippo kind of motivated me. And I saw him at the summer conference, and I remember him talking about being defensive and things like that. So, I just, as you said, I credit a lot of my own mindsets and stuff from the things that I do in reflection of the things that I read and I listen. And, I think that's an incredible piece that people need to keep in the front of their mind too, is that you're always learning. And in this job, you have to learn.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something else you've had to learn to do, because you've made a pretty major shift in the ways that you and your students and staff have been working towards standards-based grading. And so I'm just curious, how have you guys been able to make that shift, and what difference has it made in your outcomes and in your culture?
Yeah. Well, I think what we really started to realize, coming out of the pandemic, is that compliance became more of a motivational technique. We're trying to get back to routine and things like that. And then we realized, we're not seeing the growth academically that we would like to see. We're not bouncing back to the height that we had hoped to. So we needed to really dive in and try to find okay, what is it? What is going on? And what we really realized was that, we were designing assessments that were more for, compliance-based behavior, and rather than deep learning and intentional application and evidence-based criterion and stuff. And we realized that this wasn't really helping our cause. So we started a summer cohort this past year. And I thought initially, and this is kind of like the status quo for me, biting off more than I can chew at times, I thought, well, I'll have, 3 to 5 people really want to dive into this and learn and make some changes. Well, our last session, I think we had 21 people at the table.
Wow.
And, that included some of our staff members at the middle school. And I thought, wow, we've really caught, momentum here, and have really started a really strong conversation about being reflective on our past practices, and really see a need to make a step forward. And I thought, wow, this is great. We're really going to down this endeavor as a high school, which is a little bit atypical because, GPAs, transcripts, that stuff is a real motivational factor, and it's a legitimate factor. And we're going to kind of change our practices here to be more focused on evidence-based criteria, applicable learning skills, clear definitions of proficiency levels, rather than arbitrary conglomerate averages, that are generated in, gradebook programs. So it's not been easy, I should say, but hard work generally comes with good results. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Wow. I appreciate how you explained that shift from compliance to deeper learning. And I'm going to bet as a result, you've actually seen increases in performance among students. I also know, Paden, because we've corresponded and talked off the recording, that one of the guys I've had on my show, a good friend of mine, Garth Larson, has connected with you too around standards and evidence-based. Talk about your relationship with them, because First Educational Resources is, I'm a big fan of their work, and I want listeners to know how that relationship helped you too.
Yeah. So I first heard from Garth on your podcast, and so as soon as I kind of listened, and everything he spoke about really resounded in the moment where my mind was at. I was actually exercising, walking the halls, towards the end of last school year, listening to that episode, and I thought, man, I need to kick this off. I need to see if there's interest. I want to see if there's momentum to go in this direction. So I pulled a lot of the resources from them, and attended some virtual professional development. Any opportunity to learn for free is a great opportunity, and so I've taken advantage of that. I bought his book, The Fires of Grading Reform, and that's really been a useful tool in the conversations with staff and conversations with parents and guardians as we navigate these changes. And I'll tell you, like, those that have, in my opinion, in conversations that have adjusted best have been the kids, which to me, that is just a testament that, yes, we're moving in the right direction, because, having opportunities to, receive intervention, to relearn skills that they may not have gotten the first time, opportunities to reassess and demonstrate their learning later down the road, and knowing that the conditions of that exact day, moment in time aren't going to be detrimental to their learning. It's really shifting us to that growth mindset piece that you want kids to leave here with, that you want them to be forever a learner. So now we're starting to design a system, implement supports that allow for that to be possible.
Well, I'm going to make a note to myself to put a link to First Educational Resources website and Garth's content, and maybe that past episode too, Paden. Yeah. And I'm just geeking out right now because whenever I take those assessments of like personality, I'm typically falling into that category of I'm a connector. Mm-hmm. And so, like, there's no greater joy for me that would, like, when somebody who's on my show gets to connect with somebody else who's listening to the show. And then I find out months or years later, like, oh my gosh, look at all this transformation that's happened on the show. So Principal Matters listeners, if you don't know Garth Larson, I'll try to put a link in the show notes to that previous episode too. But I want to shift gears here, Paden, and I also know you've got some PD you're doing today. So thank you for just jumping into this conversation today and making this happen. But you're also a husband and a father. And and of a, you guys have a little one at home. And so I know we have listeners that are in all kinds of places in their careers. But I just want to ask you personally, how do you guard your energy so that your leadership role is enhancing rather than draining your ability to also be present for your family? And I know that's never done perfectly.
Yeah, it's, that I'll always say that the toughest job in the world is to be a parent. And that's becoming a parent myself has really reframed my mindset when I'm communicating with parents of students and things like that, because I believe, in most circumstances, every parent or guardian wants what's best for their children. So when things are coming, whether it's of joy or frustration or disappointment, it's coming out for what you want best for your children. I have learned so much as a dad. I feel like I'm a student again, so that keeps you very sharp. But it's not an easy thing, and I don't always succeed at balancing my time. My wife also is a school employee. She was previously a middle school assistant principal, and now she's a school improvement coach. And we were both very much, treading that path of school leader. And, that was a challenge, but through that, leaning on each other, learning from each other, working together, we've been able to develop habits and routines and things that, puts our son as the highest priority, because he's an amazing little 3-year-old. My wife's background's in elementary education. So we have a schoolhouse at home. And we have things that we work on, and just to see to truly see how kids learn at that age is an amazing thing. It really is an amazing thing.
I love that. I'm just having this memory of a good friend of mine. She was an assistant principal partner back when we were young admins, and her husband was a football coach, and there would be times where he'd throw that 2 and 3 year old boy on his back, like put him in a backpack on his back, right in the middle of a scrimmage or a game. I mean, so you've just got to figure it out when it comes to like, okay, how do we combine these worlds together? And I know that's never done perfectly, but I wanted to just ask you that question, Paden, because I know that for you, the journey of leadership, creating a sustainable, stable place for students is also for you a commitment, not just for you, but for your family. And so this has been I know this journey for you has been longer than just the 5 years that you're a principal, but as you're speaking to other either aspiring leaders that are listening to the show or current leaders or veteran leaders, I just am curious, what are some pieces of advice that you would give them to be thinking about as they're just holding on to what's the best practice for you that might be helpful for them?
Yeah. Well, I think something that's really stuck with me, and again, this kind of goes back to our superintendent. His kind of call to all our school employees in our district is, simple: take care of kids. So when I was a teacher, that was your, top priority. But when I moved into this position, because as a school leader, naturally, you're a little bit more removed from that direct connection with the students in your building. So what's the best way for me to take care of kids? And that's to try to take care of the adults that are taking care of kids. And that's something that I've learned, like I said, I read a lot of Jimmy Casas, I read a lot of Joe Sanfilippo and things like that. And, that's, I think, a big part of some of their messages too. But I think that's so important. The best advice that I would give a new, current, aspiring school leader is take care of the people in your building that are taking care of the students in your building, whether that's a teacher, a cook, a custodian, a bus driver, school counselors. The message from the conference that I was at yesterday was the greatest role in schools is school counselors. And I am blessed to work with 2 of the best school counselors that you could find, and what they navigate each and every day, what they do to support students each and every day, very much behind closed doors, not in front of an audience of a classroom. I can't say enough about what they do, and however I can support them best supports the students in my building.
That's so good. All right, Principal Matters listeners, if you don't do anything else in your today and you're trying to think about, okay, how do I hold on to the most important values in this work, just rewind 2 minutes and just listen back to what Paden just said. Because, man, Paden, when you want to take care of kids as a leader, you do it by taking care of the people that are taking care of those kids. Mm-hmm. Those are so those are not contradictions.
Yeah,
they're all a part of the same strategy. Paden, I'm so proud of your work. Congratulations on being the West Virginia School Counselors Association Administrator of the Year for 2026. As we wrap up, I would love listeners to know how they can find you or connect with you if they would love to collaborate. And then any parting words of advice.
I am kind of an off the grid kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do a whole lot of social media. It's never really been, but they can go to tylerconsolidatedhighschool.org and connect through me through ThrillShare and Aptigee through our messaging system. There, they can also find my school email address, paden.morse@ke12.wv.us. There, I am on Facebook, but I am a Facebook just to post pictures of my son and memorable moments with my wife. So I don't use it as part of my professional endeavor. So I'm old school when it comes to that kind of stuff. So.
Well, we'll make sure to put a link to tylerconsolidatedschools.org and your email address. And what parting words do you want to leave with listeners today, Paden?
I think just to kind of circle back on the best advice is in these positions, a lot of times you are standalone. You make some of the biggest decisions, some of the hardest decisions, and you take full ownership of that. But where I find a lot of the best support is through networking, continuous learning, reading and listening, and surrounding yourself with people that have walked that path, have lived those experiences, and are reflective on those. Like I said, I give you a ton of credit. The things I've learned from your books, from your podcast, from the guest on your show, it's been definitely impactful. And I've said it before, it's been the best professional development that I've received.
Well, Paden, it's an honor. This year, we, as a podcast community, of course, my daughter Emily edits my show. Jen Schwanke and I co-host together, and we were just talking at the beginning of 2026. So one of our goals this year is we really want to elevate the voice of the practitioners, the principals, the assistant principals, folks that are doing this work, and you are doing it, my friend. And I know you're going to step right from this to doing it. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to introduce you to Principal Matters listeners. I just want to celebrate the achievement that your own community has recognized in your work too. I want to thank you for doing great work for your school community. And Principal Matters listeners, as you step into your day, I want you to hold on to those values too, of taking care of kids, taking care of those who take care of kids, creating students that are, what are those three words?
Supporting, contributing,
caring, all of those things today. So thank you, Paden.
Yeah.
Principal Matters listeners, thank you for listening. And until next time, thanks for doing what matters. You can find free resources like this one at williamdparker.com. Subscribe for our free weekly newsletter, which contains bonus material. And also check out the links for Grow Academies, Masterminds, Executive Coaching, and Keynote presentations for my books, as well as from Principal Matters Associates. You can find out more under our speakers tab at williamdparker.com. Thank you for learning together, and thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.